The house took the rain like a held breath, and the key turned too easily. Claire Hayes said, just one night, then unpack. The hallway smelled of cold plaster and wet cedar. A thud rose from the back room, sharp as a dropped stone. Claire Hayes said, "Hello, is someone there?" The lights trembled and steadied. Her phone buzzed, a voicemail stamped 3:03 a.m., though it was not yet midnight. A scream filled the speaker, raw, jagged, and close. The sound curled around her ribs like wire. She followed it to the empty room with the cracked window. Dust rolled in the beam of her flashlight like slow snow. On the floor sat a Polaroid still slick with chemicals. It showed the same room, and Claire in it, facing away. Claire Hayes said, "This is a joke." The photo's date read last week. Her footprints were not the only marks in the dust. The window sighed, and the door drifted toward its frame. The voicemail ended with a whisper that knew her name. The voicemail icon stayed red, like a wound that would not clot. Claire Hayes said, "It was recorded from here." The kitchen light hummed as if it hid a voice. Water traced little rivers down the window and pooled on the sill. She checked the back door twice and found the bolt loose. Claire Hayes said, "No one is inside." The words tasted false. She called Ethan Ward and heard his sleepy hello. Ethan Ward said, "Move tomorrow, you sound white." The line crackled with road noise that did not belong. A cupboard clicked, slow as a metronome. Claire Hayes said, "Say something only you would say." Static answered with the start of their song. The speaker distorted, and then cleared. "Ethan Ward," said Claire, "are you hearing that too?" The bulb dipped, and the hum fell into a hush that pressed against her chest. The empty room waited like a paused breath, and she entered with the flashlight low. Claire Hayes said, "If you are hurt, I can help." Silence arranged itself into shapes near the vent. The paint peeled in long curls like shed skin. She saw chalk lines on the floor, a box shape and a circle inside it. Claire Hayes said, "What game is this?" A cold slipped into her sleeve and nested there. The glass caught her outline and then skewed it, as if she were two people. A whisper rose through the vent and grated into syllables. It sounded like a name pinned under water. Claire Hayes said, "I heard you. Say it again." The air moved without breeze, and the chalk dust lifted. The circle smudged, and a thumbprint appeared where hers had not been. The flashlight dipped, and the beam trembled with her breath. She found the narrow stair to the basement behind a swinging panel. The wood sighed at her weight like an old memory. Claire Hayes said 5 minutes, then back upstairs. The steps fell into dark like broken teeth. A chain pulled a single bulb to life, and shadows braided on the ductwork. A box marked V sat by the boiler, damp at the corners. Claire Hayes said, "V for vacant or for venom." The lid rasped and showed ribbon, a locket, and brittle paper. The boiler hiccuped and the bulb fluttered. Something small skittered behind the paint cans and stopped. Claire Hayes said, "I hear you." The paper bore a name she knew only from rumor. The quiet pooled like oil and reflected the bulb as a pale eye. Back upstairs, the wallpaper near the window puckered like a held secret. Claire Hayes said, "Show me what you hid." She slid a fingernail under the seam and peeled. Paste gave way with a wet hiss. Letters carved into the plaster emerged one by one. The words read, "I never left," and her mouth dried. Claire Hayes said, "You wanted me to see this." Behind the letters, the wall sounded hollow. She pressed and felt a flex like thin bone. The panel lifted enough to reveal a key and a locket. Inside the locket lay a tiny photo of a girl with winter eyes. "Claire Hayes," said Lena. The room answered with a light tick, like a ring against glass. The rain paused, and the house listened for what she would do next. The rain gave way to silence, and the house breathed with her. Claire Hayes said, "If you wanted me gone, you'd have done it already." The kitchen clock ticked one beat too long. The air smelled of iron, sharp and metallic. She sat at the table with the locket, staring at the photo of the girl. A knock tapped from the wall, soft but insistent, as if a knuckle pressed from the other side. "Claire Hayes," said Lena. "Is that you?" The chair leg dragged as though nudged. The light above her buzzed, then flicked out, plunging the room into blue shadow. She thumbed her phone flashlight, which painted the locket silver in her palm. From the window, a whisper threaded through the crack, shaping her name again. Claire Hayes said, "I'm listening, show me." The pull shifted, rattling the glass, and the locket slipped to the floor with a ring that echoed too long. Morning came thin and colorless, as if the sun were reluctant. Claire Hayes said, "Maybe the night exaggerated it." Her coffee steamed faintly, but carried no warmth. She opened the back door, and the yard was slick with dew, the grass bending under weight it should not bear. Tracks pressed in two directions, one hers, one too narrow. Claire Hayes said, "Not mine." She followed the narrow prints until they vanished near the fence. A crow cried once and flew low, its shadow knifing across her shoes. Her phone chimed, a new voicemail from 3:03 a.m., time-stamped during her sleep. She played it, and the same scream shredded through the speaker. Claire Hayes said, "This isn't ending in daylight." She looked back to the house, which seemed to squat heavier on its foundation. The window upstairs blinked with a shadow's retreat. That night she tried to hold on to normalcy, setting dinner on the counter. The plate steamed once, then cooled too fast. Claire Hayes said, "You don't get to eat with me." The radio clicked on by itself, whispering static layered with faint voices. She unplugged it, yet the whisper continued crawling from the vent. The cupboard opened a crack, hinges creaking. She slammed it shut, but the latch unhooked again. Claire Hayes said, "Stop it." The whisper rose into a shriek, then fell silent, leaving the air heavy. Her phone buzzed with Ethan Ward's name, though the screen froze and showed no call. She said, "Ethan," and heard him answer faintly from the unplugged radio. The words carried a warning, "Don't stay." Claire staggered back, her breath fast, realizing he had not called. Claire locked every door and sat with her back to the wall. The silence crawled, filled with small creaks from the attic. Claire Hayes said, "No one's here but me." The ceiling thudded once, twice, then dragged like something heavy moving. Dust fell in a trickle along the doorframe. She stood with the flashlight, neck bent to the stairwell. Claire Hayes said, "If you want me there, you'll have to try harder." The attic hatch shifted before her eyes, rope swinging with no wind. A whisper, closer now, curved her name in a slow drawl. She gripped the flashlight tighter, pulse loud, and forced herself to step forward. The sound of nails scratching wood drew down the walls, a clawed invitation she could not ignore. She climbed the attic ladder, each rung groaning under her weight. The hatch opened into stale dark smelling of moth and stone. Claire Hayes said, "I'm not afraid of you." Her flashlight cut a circle across trunks, cobwebs, and broken toys. A mirror leaned against the far wall, clouded and cracked. In its reflection, a girl stood, though the attic itself held only dust. Claire Hayes said, "Lena, why me?" The girl's lips moved, but the sound was a hiss that scratched her ear. Her reflection reached toward Claire's, palm pressed against the glass. Behind the girl's image, another shadow loomed, tall and thin, bending unnaturally. Claire dropped her voice to a whisper. "What is it?" The glass spider webbed with a crack as if answering her question. Claire woke from a dream that felt like drowning, her chest slick with sweat. The clock read 3:03 a.m., glowing sickly green. Claire Hayes said, "Not again." The window shivered, as if fingers drummed outside. A shadow stretched across the ceiling and dissolved before she could trace it. Her phone blinked with a missed call from Ethan Ward, but when she pressed play, the voice was not his. A low childlike whisper murmured her name again and again, each syllable pulled thin like wire. "Claire Hayes," said Lena, "what do you want?" The silence that followed was worse. Her door creaked open an inch, though she had locked it. A draft slid over her ankle, icy and damp. She rose with the flashlight, its beam trembling on the wall, and saw the Polaroid pinned to her door. This time, the photo showed her asleep in the bed she was standing beside now. The dream returned before she could even close her eyes again. Claire Hayes said, "I'm inside it now." In the dream, the house hallways bent longer, walls tilting inward. A child's laughter echoed, sharp, too close, then far away. She followed the sound to the cracked window, but the view outside was not the street. It was a dark forest, the branches clawing against each other. The locket in her dream burned against her chest, glowing faint silver. Claire Hayes said, "Show me, Lena." The ghost of a girl appeared at the end of the hall, barefoot, hair dripping, dress torn. Her face blurred until it sharpened again with sorrow. The floorboards groaned under Claire's dream steps, though her body in the bed never moved. The girl raised one hand, pointing at the attic door, and the dream collapsed into black. Claire jolted awake, her chest rising too fast. The attic hatch creaked open by itself, rope ladder unfurling. Claire Hayes said, "I saw you point me here." She climbed again, each rung softer than wood should be. The attic swallowed her flashlight beam. Boxes had moved since last night, stacked into crooked towers that leaned. A small wooden toy horse rested in the center of the floor, too clean to be old. Claire Hayes said, "Is this yours, Lena?" A faint child's sob echoed from the far corner. Her light caught the mirror again, now cracked deeper, edges jagged. A pale hand pressed the glass from inside, nails scraping faint arcs. Claire felt her breath drawn toward it, as if pulled. She forced herself back, trembling, whispering, "Not yet, not like this." Downstairs she reached for her phone and dialed Ethan Ward. His voice answered too quickly, breathless. "Ethan Ward," said Claire, "you need to leave that house." She froze. The connection cracked, his voice layered with static. Then another voice spoke in unison with his, a deep echo that chilled her. "Claire Hayes," said Ethan, "are you alone?" Silence followed, broken by a long sigh that was not human. A shape passed across her window, taller than any person, bending wrong angles. Claire dropped the phone and pressed her back to the wall. Ethan's voice finally broke through faintly. "Claire, it's not me calling." The line went dead. Claire found herself shaking as she bolted the front door. A knock rattled it instantly, hard and deliberate. Claire Hayes said, "Who's there?" No answer, only the slow scrape of fingernails down the wood. She backed away, clutching the locket. The knocking shifted to every door and window at once, a chorus of intrusions. Claire Hayes said, "Stop." Her voice cracked. The locket warmed, pulsing, and a girl's face appeared faint in the glass pane by the door. Lena Vale said, "You can't keep it out." Her voice echoed in Claire's head more than her ears. Claire fell to her knees, breath shallow. The air carried weight, pressing down on her chest. Then, silence. Total silence. As if the house had swallowed every sound she might make next. Claire sifted through the attic boxes until dust clogged her throat. Inside one, brittle papers and photos spread like dry leaves. Claire Hayes said, "These are from before I was born." The photos showed the house decades earlier, the same cracked window, the same peeling walls. But each one contained a blurred figure, sometimes a girl, sometimes taller. Claire's fingers shook as she unfolded a deed, stamped with her family name. Claire Hayes said, "No, this can't be mine." A date matched the year her mother left town and never returned. The air thickened, pressing around her chest. A whisper from the mirror rose, sorrowful and low. Lena Vale said, "They left me here." Claire's heart beat hard, and she whispered back, "You're the reason we came back." In the basement, she opened the damp box marked V again. This time, deeper folders revealed brittle letters addressed to her mother. Claire Hayes said, "Why didn't you tell me?" The ink had run with water, but names bled clear. Lena Vale, victim. A police report said the girl had vanished inside this house 40 years ago. Claire dropped the paper as if it burned. From behind the boiler, A sigh rose, raspy and cold. Claire Hayes said, "You were never buried, were you?" The locket in her hand grew warm until it throbbed. A faint figure drifted against the far wall, pale and thin. Claire whispered, "I know your name now." Claire returned upstairs, gripping the letter. A knock at the front door startled her. When she opened it, a man in a dark coat stood waiting, his eyes hollow but steady. He said, "You shouldn't be here alone." She stared, recognizing him faintly from old photos in the box. Claire Hayes said, "Who are you?" The man whispered, "I tried to stop it once. I failed." His voice trembled with grief. Claire asked, "You're the one who left her here?" He nodded slowly, shadow falling across his face. The house groaned as if disapproving his presence. Claire stepped back, torn between fear and need for answers. They sat at the kitchen table, silence folding around them. The man finally spoke. "Mysterious stranger," said, "Lena wasn't meant to die here, but the house holds grudges." Claire Hayes said, "She calls to me." He rubbed his face with tired hands. Mysterious stranger said, "I tried to seal it, but every bloodline drags it back. Yours too." Claire trembled. She whispered, "My mother knew." He nodded, eyes glistening with regret. A faint tapping echoed under the table, a rhythm like heartbeat. Both froze, their gazes darting down. The locket pulsed, glowing faint silver between Claire's fingers. The stranger rose, his chair scraping harshly. Mysterious stranger said, "If you stay, it will claim you as it claimed her." Claire Hayes said, "She's not the enemy." The walls groaned like they understood. A cold draft wrapped the locket, almost pulling it from her grasp. Lena Vale whispered, "Help me." The sound rose from every vent. Claire clutched the locket to her chest. Claire Hayes said, "I'll find a way." The stranger's eyes darkened. Mysterious stranger said, "You don't know what it costs." He stepped back into the shadows, vanishing before the door even opened. Claire stood shaking, torn between fear and resolve, as the house seemed to lean closer around her. Claire stood in the hallway, the locket burning against her chest. Claire Hayes said, "You're not the one haunting me, are you?" A sudden slam shook every door at once, and the mirror upstairs cracked further. A shadow peeled away from the wall, taller than the ceiling itself. "One home," Lena Vale whispered. "It is him." Claire froze, realizing the girl had never been her enemy. The air carried the weight of something ancient, something that had been here before either of them. Claire Hayes said, "Then who have I been fighting?" The house answered with a moan, boards warping, nails screeching like claws. The shadow pressed closer, stretching its limbs across the ceiling like a net. The shadow deepened, swallowing the light. Claire's phone buzzed again, Ethan Ward's name flashing, but when she answered, a voice unlike his spoke. The villain said, "You carry the key. Give it back." Claire Hayes said, "This locket isn't yours." The laughter that followed scraped against her ears like knives. The walls flickered as though flame licked beneath the wallpaper. Claire staggered, clutching her head, hearing two voices, one Ethan's, begging her to leave, and one deeper, demanding surrender. Claire Hayes said, "I won't give you what you want." The shadow's hand reached out of the wall, stretching toward her. Claire backed into the kitchen, only for cupboards to fly open, plates smashing on the floor. Claire Hayes said, "You want me afraid, but I'm still here." Lena Vale appeared faintly in the reflection of the oven door, whispering, "Don't listen to him." Claire clung to her words, but the voice of the villain thundered, "She lies. She belongs to me." The air warped, heavy with heat, and every bulb burst in sequence, plunging the kitchen into near dark. Claire Hayes said, "No, she's not yours." The locket burned so hot it left an imprint in her palm, but she refused to drop it. Claire ran to the basement, chasing instinct, the locket guiding her. She ripped aside boxes until she found another hidden panel in the wall. Claire Hayes said, "This is what you're hiding." Inside lay brittle bones wrapped in fabric, small and fragile. Claire gasped, realizing Lena had been buried here, bound by silence. Lena Vale whispered, "Free me." The villain's voice roared, "She is mine forever." Claire Hayes said, "Not anymore." The ground trembled, dust falling in steady lines, pipes rattling as though ready to burst. She pressed the locket against the bones, tears streaking her cheeks. The house screamed, beams groaning as if the walls themselves resisted. Claire Hayes said, "You kept her here because you're nothing without her." The villain's shadow rose, towering, filling every corner. The light sparked violently, showering glass. Lena's figure shone brighter, her outline steadying. She whispered, "I'm not yours anymore." Claire pressed the locket into the bundle of bones, whispering, "Be free." A shockwave of sound tore through the basement, rattling every pipe, and the shadow shrieked, its form unraveling like smoke caught in wind. Claire collapsed, the locket now cold, her chest rising with a broken sob. The air burned with the sound of splintering wood as the shadow reformed, larger, swallowing the ceiling. Claire Hayes said, "You can't keep her." Lena Vale glowed faintly beside her, shaking her head in sorrow. The villain's voice thundered, "She belongs to me, and so will you." The locket pulsed once more, dimmer than before, as if draining. Claire pressed it to her chest, whispering, "Not if I end this now." The floor buckled under her, the basement tilting as if the house itself wanted to swallow them whole. Claire braced herself, sweat cutting down her face, while Lena whispered, "You must choose." Claire ran up the collapsing stairs, the shadow crashing behind like a storm. Claire Hayes said, "I won't die in your house." The hallway lights sparked violently, bursting into showers of glass. The walls warped, the wallpaper tearing itself like skin peeling back. Ethan Ward's voice crackled faintly through her dropped phone, pleading, "Claire, don't let it in." She gasped, "It's already here." The shadow stretched ahead, cutting off the front door, its limbs spreading like roots. Claire tightened her grip on the locket until her palm bled. Claire Hayes said, "You'll take me only if I let you." Claire stumbled into the living room, air thick with smoke like darkness. Lena's ghost hovered near the cracked mirror, pointing at it again. Lena Vale whispered, "It's the door." Claire Hayes said, "If I break it, will you be free?" The villain hissed, "Break it, and you unleash me." The mirror's cracks pulsed faintly, glowing red at the seams. Claire lifted a broken chair leg, breath ragged, and said, "Then I'll take the risk." The room shook as the shadow lunged forward, its voice screeching through every wall. "You cannot win." Claire raised the wood with trembling arms. With a scream, Claire smashed the mirror, shards flying outward like knives. Light burst from the cracks, blinding white, searing through the room. The villain shrieked, its form unraveling like smoke torn by wind. Lena Vale cried out, "You've broken the chain." Claire collapsed to her knees, hands bleeding from glass, the locket falling heavy against the floor. Claire Hayes said, "It's ending now." The house convulsed once more, beams groaning like the last breaths of a dying creature. Dust fell like snow, and silence rolled in, deep and absolute. Claire's chest heaved as she crawled toward Lena's fading figure. Claire Hayes whispered, "You're free now." Lena Vale smiled faintly, her sorrow easing, and said, "Thank you." Her form dissolved into drifting light, vanishing into the ceiling. Claire reached upward, whispering, "Don't leave me here." The house gave a final shudder, then stilled, its oppressive weight lifting. The locket lay dull, no longer glowing. Claire sat in the ruins of the living room, her face streaked with dirt and tears, body trembling. She whispered, "It's over," but the silence answered with nothing at all. The night outside was still, but Claire felt the silence pressing heavier than before. Claire Hayes whispered, "She's gone." Dust lingered in the air like the memory of breathing. The locket lay dull, cold, its glow extinguished. She reached for it, her fingers trembling, and tucked it into her pocket. The house felt empty, but not safe. A floorboard creaked above, too deliberate for settling wood. Claire Hayes said, "No, you're finished." Yet her voice wavered, the weight of doubt slipping back inside her chest. The walls no longer bled shadows, but they waited, as if listening. Claire stepped outside, the night air sharp and clean. Rain had stopped, leaving streets slick with reflections. She whispered, "It's over," though her eyes stayed fixed on the house. Its windows glimmered faintly, as if watching. Ethan Ward's number rang unanswered when she tried again. Claire Hayes said, "I'll tell him everything tomorrow." Her voice faltered, because she wasn't certain there would be a tomorrow untouched by this place. The silence of the street felt unnatural, as though even the world beyond was holding its breath. The following morning, sunlight leaked thin through the curtains, but the warmth did not reach her skin. Claire Hayes said, "Daylight doesn't change anything." The locket on the table looked harmless now, an ordinary piece of jewelry. She stared at it, unable to look away, as if waiting for it to breathe. A faint tick echoed from inside its clasp, too soft to be mechanical. Claire whispered, "You're not done, are you?" Her reflection in the window seemed darker, her eyes older than her own. A knock sounded at the door, soft, patient, 3 steady taps. Claire Hayes froze, her breath caught in her throat. She whispered, "No one knows I'm here." The knock came again, louder, almost rhythmic, like a memory, repeating itself. She forced herself to the door, hand hovering over the knob. The silence after the third knock stretched, long and unnatural. Claire Hayes said, "Who is it?" The reply was a whisper, barely audible, yet it carried through her bones. "Lena da." Claire's knees weakened, her hand trembling on the knob, the sound not fading but pressing closer. Claire's hand fell away from the door, her breath shallow. She whispered, "You're supposed to be free." The whisper returned, stronger. "You freed me, but not him." The locket on the table rattled, its chain coiling like a snake. Claire backed away, her eyes wide. The house hummed again, deep in its bones, as though waking. Claire Hayes said, "No, it's starting over." The final sound was silence broken by a low laugh curling through the vents. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "It never ends."